Hi everyone, my name is Janos. I'm an organization called Housing for Homelands. So we are a charity, a privately, philanthropically funded organization with a mission to strengthen homelands in our homeland through climate and culturally appropriate housing. And about 2 years ago, we started a really exciting relationship with Laynhapuy Homelands.
Hi everybody, I'm Glenda, CEO of Layna, and today we're talking about philanthropy, and I kind of linked it in. It was afternoon and I thought it'd be a little bit funny if we linked it into basically the game of Tinder and taking it right through to marriage or divorce, depending on how you look at the philanthropic relationship. And that's the concept for today. And we've got a couple of key slides. The intent is to talk through with generalisation and then some specifics around the relationship that we've built, and hopefully we'll have time for any questions from the audience. But why did I think about the Tinder component? Well, there's like 75 million people that have actually joined up to Tinder since it launched. And did you know that there's like 60,000 registered charities and 100-odd thousand not-for-profits out there? And when you start looking at those ratios, there's a lot of people out there asking for money. And so from a synergy perspective, there's a lot of fish in the sea. But the thing is, we're all looking for our perfect match. And the next thing is, there's a lot of philanthropic funding out there as well. And there's a lot of people looking for places to actually invest. And so that's how this philosophy started to come together. And it's a pretty simple equation. It's basically capacity and incentive. And how do you link them together? And the one thing that's actually changed, and I would say this is more dramatic since COVID, is there's been a self-isolation, and it's coming to the extent that we're not seeing as many people volunteering time. People are actually preferring to dig into their pocket and hand over funds. So how do you lean into that? And if we're looking at the next big wave, it's intergenerational wealth transition. And the government's providing incentives for people to make these donations or bequeaths. And there's multiple sources for philanthropic relationships. It can come from your standard organisations like your Paul Ramseys, it can come from large corporates like your Rios, and it can also come from organisations, person next to me, your mum and dad investors. But there are people out there who are actually genuinely invested in the social outcomes and prepared to put their hand in their pocket.
So, wanted to share you my experience, who is coming from kind of like from the other side. Myself, I'm not a philanthropist, so let me fill you in like who we are as Housing for Homelands and what we do. So, myself and my partner Chloe been involved in work in Northeast Homeland for a long time. And a couple of years ago, we started some really interesting conversations with philanthropists down south. And we basically had this question came up that what would be the best way to support Aboriginal communities in the NT? And the answer came pretty fast for very obvious reasons why housing would be a very useful way that delivers some very real and tangible outcomes for communities. But then the question was like, how can we build houses using philanthropic money, so private money, right? Philanthropic money that is supports Aboriginal communities, strengthens Aboriginal communities in sustainable ways, in ways that can be replicable, can be scalable. So basically pathways that can be followed by us again and again and again, build more and more houses, or can be followed by others, other philanthropists or Aboriginal organizations, Aboriginal communities. So we started digging down in this question, and we found out that the answer is not that straightforward. It's actually very confusing, and the more and more questions we had, the more and more we found reasonable to start finding the answers by establishing relationships. So that's when we came up with the idea that maybe we should establish this kind of organization stands in the middle, who basically taking philanthropic funding and start building relationships with Aboriginal communities and homeland service providers and start looking into new ways of housing on homelands. So 3 years ago we established Housing for Homelands, and the next step was we started looking for someone who can help us out, and that's how we met Laynhapuy Homelands and approached each other. And since then it's a really interesting journey we are on, and that's why I really like, Glenda, when you sent through this idea of like this metaphor of Tinder, because like this is what it is, really building relationships, and that's how I would differentiate us from other funding sources like government sources. Like what we're interested in is long-term relationships with communities and funders. So basically we approached Layna partly because we were familiar with the organization, what Layna been doing. There is a long history of strong regional leadership, strong service delivery on homelands, because we understood that housing is not really enough for people to live on homelands. You actually need a lot of other things in place. And what we really wanted to focus on is housing, designing and building new houses, and not to deal with roads, not to deal with who is running the schools and how the health services run. So that was a really good first impression. And when we started talking to Layna, one of the really good things we felt was that they were so approachable. They spent the time to work with us. Glenda and the management, including Janos, the chair, attended at every meeting with us, listened and tried to work it out, like how we can make it work, and took us a little bit of time to get there.
So a couple of key things about that. We tried to make ourselves stand out, and what we've learned is that an online presence is really important for an organisation, and that includes the social aspect to it as well. People will make key decisions. So 54% of decisions for donations or philanthropic relationships starts in some level of social engagement, which is online. And you've got to make it easy for people to do business with you. So that's also about making it an electronic option or a simple way of connecting through a source. The other is network, so reaching through and finding Janos and the team and vice versa. We've been really fortunate. We've established a number of networks through our relationship partners, to the extent that this year, over the last 12 months, we've not only got a $1 million property promised to us through Housing for Homelands, but we've also created $500,000 in philanthropic relationship payments. Some of this has been because we've actually established a philanthropic tour. So we took a group of people who were interested in being part of our organisation on a tour of the homelands, and as a result they've invested back in us. And I use the term invested because it is a partnership, and what we're looking for is people to actually stay long term as part of that. So we've got to think beyond the grant. The second thing I need to say about having a philanthropic relationship is that you need to build the culture in your team. Hands up here who actually has dedicated people looking for philanthropic partnerships now. A couple. The next thing is, how do you keep it alive? Because there's a lot of ways to do this, and the next thing is to actually walk the walk. There are little things that we have done. So the micro changes, we've got an enterprise model, and we've introduced a thing called Round Up. So, if you come to our cafe and you want to buy a coffee, and this is a really simple example, but it's $6.41, you're not going to pay $6.41 because our person at the counter is actually going to ask you, do you want to round up? Have you heard of Layna? Every cent you spend over and above this actually supports a homeland. And we're getting people who are paying $7 now. And that little bit of extra money actually comes into our pockets. And I know that sounds like a little, but it is actually a lot when you multiply it over the long term. We've done business partner relationships. So Banu, who run corporate resorts with us now, those combinations mean that we are actually creating untied funding that we can plough into other parts of the sector for us inside Homelands. And I talk about targeting the sector. So, I have a joke about this. You could be, you could actually be playing the guitar in, Aerosmith one day, putting on a mariachi band, but you're still playing the guitar, right? All you've done is you've changed your audience. So make sure you're playing to your strengths. And the one thing about Layna is we've got multiple sectors. So we can open up our doors and say to somebody who's looking for an education, yes, please contribute to us. We've got Garthalala Bush University and this is what it delivers. Please come and work with us. We need housing in Homelands. We've got other things that we also can focus around. It could be primary health. So just making sure you understand the sector that you want to operate in. And I'm very happy to talk more about philanthropic generalisation.
So, as I mentioned, we went through this really great process for a year, like getting to know each other, and this is the next step. Once you kind of figure out who you want to work with, you need to get to know each other. And there was a lot of back and forth conversation with us. I can't even count how many times we met teams and in person, try to figure out how we can make it work. Obviously, as a philanthropic organization, we need our guidelines. Philanthropists would like to see certain outcomes, and we worked a lot on that, how you can make it work. Often you need to basically read between the lines. There's a lot of conversations happening, and you need to respond to each other. One of the thing for us was that question, thinking about a first house, so developing a pilot project, which homeland, which community we can work with, and who will make decisions on this. So it's Glenda and the team did a lot of thinking to establish within Layna a body to go through this process and think through, align with the strategic thinking, and then came back to us. It was a lot of back and forth conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, the biggest part about building a relationship is forward thinking on what are the obstacles. So even the simplicity of choosing a homeland wasn't as simple as choosing a homeland. It's about thinking about what are going to be the obstacles or items that are going to come up in a board discussion as to the why, and then making sure that it's equalised. And I think I did see Janos walk in, but there's often points raised about why is it not my homeland, why is it not my home? And as the board are quite clearly now committed to, we've just got to be happy because we're actually building a new house in a homeland. And that's something that we've always had on our vision. So having those people of strength at the table. The other thing is creating the committee. So when we went to the board, by the time we were at the board, Janos and I had a very clear direction about what we needed to do to be able to deliver this. And we set up the Homeland Committee, and that Homeland Committee allows us to have a charter, and then that actually sets out the work tables for everybody. So it's all above board. In particular, having a financial and a reputational due diligence. I know they performed it on us and we performed it on them. And the one thing we do is have them regularly at our board meetings. So there's always a placeholder spot for Housing for Homelands in each of our board meetings. And inside that, there's a standardisation of expected communication. One of those is evidence every time they come in that there's sufficient money to cover the cost of this build. And as it grows over time, we know that obviously is an offset for the risks of us with inflation. But also, how do we share communication and reward each other? So that's part of those negotiation processes. And by the way, guys, it's okay to say no. So sometimes you can come almost to the end and realise that maybe this isn't the right partnership for you. And it is genuinely okay to walk away. And it may be that it's a no today and it might be a yes tomorrow. But it is absolutely imperative to make sure that the person you're working with has a clear vision and value that aligns to your clear vision and values as well. So the next thing for us was, is it wedded bliss or is it divorce? And I think that's the big thing. You can have a really, really great entry, but you must also be thinking about what is the exit strategy for this as well. So, you know, we've got a person here who's wanting to build a new home in our homeland, and we've been discussing since day one who's actually going to look after it when it leaves, who are we handing it over to, how's it going to be funded? And I think those are part of the conversations that have to be had. I joke about the person who has the gym membership and pays as the passive person and never turns up. They're kind of like the ghost member that you really, really want. In Australia, people actually set up regular donations. Is anybody here like aligned to any employers that are getting pay deductions from employees to their... Oh, great, yeah. So that's our next step, is actually going out to some major corporates to put us on their charitable donations for payrolls, because 67% of Australians will actually not bother to change. It's too difficult for them to stop, and you can get a regular payment into your organisation and start spruiking out information about who you are and co-share. Sorry, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's important to note that once people are committed, it's very easy for them to stay committed just through passivity. The other thing we've done is think about what is the recognition that the program needs to bring. So what's Janos looking for? What are we looking for? And that has to be in a reputational mindset as well. And making sure we live the rhythm that we agree to. So Janos, as I said, he's always at our meetings. He's a regular person. He comes to our workshops. Whatever we share policy-wise, we make sure that he's across. And it's always thinking about what is it beyond the grant. So the grant is one thing, and that's a static component. And it could be in the future that we start partnering up, and instead of having a 100% contribution from Janos's team for Housing for Homeland, we might be able to break it into a 50-50 with, you know, part of the HIP funding and part of the philanthropic investment, and we get to multiply multiple homes over the homelands. So it's thinking smarter about the way you actually work through the relationship. But the key thing, like any relationship, is trust, and being clear on the communication and respectful on any level of debate.
Yeah, like trust is really, really important, especially like us, you know, we are a startup organization basically operating for 3 years. But also we're looking into being a long-term player, be there for Laynhapuy and others and Homelands, and making sure that we're doing our job in the right way. So just to share some specifics with you, like what we do and how we do it. So basically, Housing for Homelands is facilitating a project at the moment with the help of Laynhapuy. And we went out and talked to a couple of homelands and went through a selection process to land in a homeland called Gurumuru or Ningia more recently. So this is a small homeland about 170 kilometers out from Laynhapuy. Is the home of the Dalwangu clan, and there are seven houses, a small school, a clinic on the homeland, and we sit down with traditional owners in the community and started thinking about how we can make this project work. I mentioned to you that we designing a climate and culturally appropriate house. So it's really important for us, the community input, and have it like a truly community design. So we basically came up with an idea of this group who basically looks after and controls the project. So we have like 3 parties coming to this group: Laynhapuy Homelands, community representatives, and Housing for Homelands, and we make decisions together. And decisions regarding selecting a place right for the house within the homeland, a lot of design decisions, who is gonna build this house, how we're gonna build it, and we kind of have this decision-making process where we all have to agree, but at the same time we have an understanding that in some questions some parties have higher priorities. For example, when we came to the question like where is the new house should be built, it's obviously the TOs who have to make this decision. And a very important one, this is something we worked out with Lina, was that the way we do it is basically we're replacing houses that beyond economic repair. So the idea is that we build a new house and then demolish an old house which is technically not fit for human occupation. So just put up a few photos. We went out with Lina, the architect, met the community, had a lot of discussions, went through a design process when we looked into a community plan, was the long-term plan of the community with the homeland, where houses potentially could be. Then we looked into a house that could be culturally appropriate, so went through appropriate kinship protocols when we need to think about when we're looking into the house layout. And we started coming up with some layouts and some options, and this is where we are at now. So we're basically looking into building the first pilot house next year, and between now and then we have a lot of work to do. So that's it. We would love to hear if you have questions or any thoughts, feedback.
Is it only for Homelands? Because I'm from Kalana and we've got 2 town camps, we've got a homeland, and we've got 15 houses in town, in Catherine itself.
Mm.
So, you know, is this only targeted at Homelands, or do town camps come into it too?
Mm. Well, at the moment we're thinking only about Homelands. Yeah.
Problem is we've got 35 serviced allotments vacant. Some are at Rockhole, some are at Laynhapuy, and a heap are at what most people call Walbury Camp, we call it Geelkin.
Mm.
So we've got a lot of vacancies, vacant blocks, but we haven't got the money to build the houses.
Mm. Yeah.
We could look at something like in partnership. We wouldn't be expecting, Kalana has never been one to expect to get a big bucket of money without us contributing.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
pay our own way.
So basically the reason why we said specifically on Homelands, it's really coming from our experience working with Yolngu in Northeast Arnhem Land, and during my past 15 years up there, the stories I was hearing from Yolngu is that this is where they want to be. They don't want to be in big communities. Myself, I lived in Yirrkala for many years. I saw a lot of things that happening in those communities that it's a clear outcome of interclan relationships, and it really goes back to the basically Aboriginal self-determination. As I understand, it's a big part of it, like where people want to be. So
This is why we've got basically 4 locations, but 3 that are considered to be camps or homelands, because we do keep the clans, or try to keep the clans. Our tenancy application forms ask you what clan you're from, who have you got relationships with. So they get a choice of Rockhole, Laynhapuy, Walbury Camp. They never get a choice of town because everybody wants to live in town. So
May I suggest there's actually a philanthropic summit in Brisbane in September, and there'll be hundreds of groups, but there'll be philanthropic investors there as well. Could be an option to come down and do some pitching in that networking setting, for opportunity for anybody in the room actually to go down and talk to people who are interested, who have the funding as donors, to put forward concepts.
So who do we get in touch with?
I can share you the link. Well, you're welcome to contact me. I can show you the link. And you can definitely get involved in that.
Yeah, I think on that, just a second. I think it's really important to there's this story about philanthropic readiness, which is basically you have to be able to tell the story and show a pathway for philanthropies that is viable. And when I was sharing like our experiences starting up housing for Homelands, is exactly coming up from that point. Like when there's a question is like, why there's not that small amount of philanthropy going into Aboriginal communities, I strongly believe the answer to that is because the pathway is not as so clear for philanthropists to tap into. It's a really complex space. There's a lot have to be understood, and if you can tell your story and show a pathway for basically philanthropists to invest, I think it's a high chance for success.
And I'm very happy, I'll send you my details, and very happy to help you out with getting ready for those stories as well, if you like. Because it is about the pitch. It really is about the pitch. There's like 19 billion in circulation for Philanthropic, and only 179 million comes to Indigenous organisations. And it is to that point. It's the readiness, it's generally the ability to make the key decisions. So how do people get through that governance model and providing that clear path for people to do that? It's time.
Yep.
Oh, so sorry.
So what I would encourage you is to, if you have any questions, that maybe you can ask our two presenters.
I'm just going to say I'm from Borroloola, right? I was going to ask the same question that this man asked, but we're here talking about Homelands. Mabungi's been going since 1982 as Homeland Resource Centre. We started up as a Homeland Resource Centre in Borroloola, but then we had to take over the local housing in Borroloola, the 5 living areas that we look after today. Borroloola is a town, it's not a community. Everybody seems to think Borroloola is a community. It's a town, it's a gazetted town, got gazetted in the 1800s. And we look after 20 homelands, 7 on the islands, and the rest on the mainland, the size of Tasmania. And we've been operating since 1982, when I was young. And we're still operating today. We're next to the resource centre from Laynhapuy. They've been operating a bit longer than us. And the other, Bawananga, at Manangrita. You know, and we do a lot of stuff on the islands, work out on the islands, and on the mainland. Like I said, we've got an area the size of Tasmania that we work around. And what I'm hearing here today, are we concentrating on one homeland, or are we concentrating on all the homelands, all the town camps, or what are we talking about?
Well, what I'm really talking about is a pathway. It's an alternative pathway to design and build houses in Aboriginal communities, other than government funding. This is what we're trying to do here.
You know, and we know most of the resource centres in Homeland, wherever the resource centres are set up, we know the funding is getting shorter and shorter every year. And we can't carry out the functions what we done 20 years ago because of the funding getting shorter and shorter. You know, we are only limited to things what we can do now. Like years ago, we used to have CDP. CDP is to help out in a way. But now some of the resource centres, we haven't got CDP. So we have to make do what we got. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it's a lot harder since that intervention just totally disempowered a lot of our bush, you know. So it's about how they can, come back again.
Yeah, and so this is a strategy to look at philanthropic partnerships and find that bucket of money that isn't coming from government. But you need to be ready for it, and you need to be able to pitch for it, because these are private people coming forward and saying, we're happy to invest in you, but you need to show us the pathway to do that. And that's the difference, and that's why there's so little that trickles into the Indigenous sector, because they've always got concerns over the governance models.